what's up, guys? I want to welcome you to episode 27 of Street Theology. It is your boy, Pastor Adrian. And today I am joined by our experienced architect, the one, the only. Today's his birthday as we're recording this. We're recording this today. It's your birthday. Trey Zoda. Trey, what's happening, man?
You know, resident white guy here at Street Theology. Just back doing my thing.
I was thinking that when you sat down, I didn't say it.
Hey, Trey, you're right.
Good, doing good though.
Now you know what it feels like to be a minority, Trey. You know what I'm saying? Don't say a whole lot. Your opinion doesn't really matter. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. Let me stop before I get fired already. Anyway, that being said as well, the other voice that you hear is our expressions director, Michelle Warner. Michelle, what's happening?
What's up? Glad to be back.
I'm glad that you were here. Well, guys, we are excited you're here again. As you guys know, Street Theology, we simply exist here to help develop innovative reconcilers to help bring theology to a street level, and encouraging everyone to think critically about the world around them. Again, our deep passion here at Engage, and really across, not just at Engage, but really across the globe. And we feel God is doing this idea of launching innovative reconcilers, people who are connected to God, one another, their meaningful work in the earth. And we want to bring real deep theology to the street level for people, very practical ways. And so, again, we're super excited that you guys have joined us. Again, the fact that we are 27 episodes into this, it has been an amazing ride. Again, 2020, as my good friend Adam Mabry said the other day, it's like I feel like I've been living like I've been living in Wednesday for the last 26 years. You know,
Wow.
You know, it's just it's been a long year, but there's been a lot of highlights of this. You know, a lot of highlights. There've been a lot of low moments of this year. One of them is honestly the Street Theology people. Again, it's really cool. You know, I've met a few different people, even who has nothing to do with Engage, who saw something maybe I post on social media about it, and they start following Street Theology and they love it. You know, they're Jesus followers. They're like, man, the way you guys think about this has been really helping me, and so again, we're just super helpful. So guys, make sure you share on your social media when you see things put up. Make sure you guys, if you haven't written a review, do that, like it, give us 5 stars. You know, again, we really appreciate it, as we hopefully it's added some value to your life. And so today we're recording the last pod of 2020. You know, this is the last one of 2020. And so today, man, we're going to do this. This episode is called Life Goes On. Cannot believe we are 27 episodes in, and today's podcast again is Life Goes On 2020 Reflections. And so we're going to look at 2020. There were a lot of, again, this has been a year. This has been a year.
Understatement.
Yeah, it's an understatement. Again, this has probably been, I think, it has been. It's not even like it is the most difficult year that the world has ever experienced collectively since 1918. You know, or in the early 1900s, whether if it was during the time of, you know, whether it could potentially have been like during World War I. You know, the Great War started, the pandemic that happened with the Spanish flu, to the fact of World War II, stock market crashing. I mean, all those that kind of down during that time frame. But this year has been a really, really difficult year, and the hardest one I think that most of those who are alive have actually had to experience. And so we're going to start off simply with this, guys, and I just want to ask you guys this question, man. Like, kind of what it was. You know, again, we all know 2020 has kind of sucked, right? So let's start with something a little bit different. Like, what's been like the best part for you personally? And then let's start with what's the best part for you personally? But then what's maybe been one of the highlights, you know, if it's in a, you know, from a church level to a nation level, world level, something that you saw. I mean, what's been like, so what's a personal highlight, and then what's just been like a life highlight in general? So we'll start with you, Michelle.
I think first personal highlight that comes to mind is actually one of my really good friends who I've been praying for a long time is taking steps towards Jesus.
Nice.
And asking some really serious questions related to her faith. And that's been really cool. We've been really good friends for like 2 years. And so I feel like it's been a long time coming. That's something I'm really excited about. I think even just in work and church wise, seeing the way that things have been accelerated here has been really cool. I feel like God's been doing a lot here. Getting to be a part of the book was really awesome. It's like a childhood dream was to write a book that gets published. And so to be a part of that whole process was literally a dream fulfilled. So it's been cool.
Yep. For you guys who don't know, Michelle really helped me with a lot of the heavy lifting of the book that I wrote, Mask Off. We spent a lot of time of where we would sit together. I would just dictate what I was thinking, feelings, thoughts, and then she just did an incredible job of putting it to words. Also, Dina Landers was a part of it, especially at the beginning of the process before Dina moved. And so, if you guys haven't read it, make sure you go out, you grab one. Again, hopefully it can help you, especially going into this new year, the idea of authenticity.
Shameless plug
fully. They're not even like, they're not shameless. Like, they're like, people are like, oh man, shameless plug. No. Like, I'm fully plugging what I work way too hard. We work way too hard for this. I'm plugging. Sure I'm plugging this. So.
It's about to change the title of this podcast to 2020 Plugs House instead of.
Oh man. All right. Well, Trey, what about you, boss?
Hands down, the highlight of my year, Mandalorian season 2. I mean, I got married, but you know what, man? Baby Yoda's on another level for me. I mean,
shout out to Mandalorian.
No, but for real, there's been a lot of really good things in spite of like how crazy the country's been. Got married, that was super cool. Lot of transition in general, like. Was able to continue going to grad school, even though that looked a lot different. Started working here at Engage. Feel like God's just really calling me into a new chapter of my life and kind of opening a lot of doors for what he wants to do with me. So, I'm just super excited for what that'll look like in the future and kind of what the next steps are.
Yeah, man. Well, that is, I appreciate you sharing. I think for me, again, there's been a lot, I think from a personal level, I would honestly say, personally, I mean, again, there's been so many incredible things that have actually happened. I mean, to be honest with you, I felt like a lot of my kind of 2020 personally was like 2017, where it was just like, it was brutal. But there's been a lot of really good stuff. I mean, from a personal level, I mean, just honestly, I can honestly say like, just another step in a really good way in my marriage has been, and I think a lot of it has been just with me personally learning, when you look at the idea of, prophet, priest, king, I actually operate a lot as like from a, again, it's from what I mean as a king, like very like driven, that's where we're going, And then like the prophetic side of me is very just much of a truth teller. Yeah. But I think that's kind of how I operate, is like kind of like this, like kind of like king prophet. But at the end of the day, God is really teaching me how to actually be more of a priest, to that's actually awesome. Really like to have a greater level of like empathy, because I really do. I love and I care for people. But for me, I'm very driven to where we're trying to go. But what I'm learning is that, man, especially, and again, the biggest place I should do that at is at home, and learning to do that even at a greater level. So that part's been really, really cool. Even with my children, like, I think for me, I'm always been the guy who I never want to have like dad glasses on. Like I never want to be the guy who's blinded by their kids and like, oh, they don't, my kids don't do anything wrong. Especially, and then you have the overthing of being being a pastor is one of the things I do. And then you like, sometimes, the stigma of preachers' kids, like they don't, they wild out or they're the pastor is like ignorant to what their kids do. So I'm always more on the negative to make sure my kids do this. But man, one of the things is I'm learning to be more priestly it's really with my children, man. My whole thing this year and just praying for them is that I want my kids to be wildly self-aware. And what God's made them, who they are in Jesus, with their skills and their gifts. But also I want my kids, I'm going to say this, and some people may agree, I want my kids to be obnoxiously confident in what they're good at. Like I want them to be obnoxiously confident, like in who they are and what they're really good at and who they're meant to be. Because I think so many times in life, you're so worried about, it's always, I started realizing many times with my kids, I didn't celebrate my children at the level I should have celebrated my kids because I was worried about other people. Yeah. Versus realizing like at the end of the day, like, no, like when my kids, the enemy life is going to always tell them they suck. They're going to push against them and whatever. Life is going to happen. People are going to say stuff. I want them to understand that as their dad, like, no. Like, you're not going to live in a fantasy. If you're not good at something, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, that's like the greatest painting in the world. You should be an artist. Like, no, like you can't, like Jalen, I love my son. You can't draw stick figures. So you're not going to be Picasso. So I'm not going to be like, oh man, keep just working hard, buddy. You're going to be like, no. Like we got some, but the things that they're really good at, I want them to know that, to be so self-aware, but to be wildly confident in it. Because again, I think it just does. So I'm learning. to that. So that part from a personal level has been cool. And there's just been a lot of personal cool stuff I've been able to do. You know what I mean? You know, we wrote a book, you know, so me and Michelle always say, like, we did a thing.
We did a
thing.
We
did a thing. We wrote a book. And so that was always a deal. You know, I started a company, a consulting company that's kind of, you know, just casual. That just kind of like just took off, man. Another thing is that I was asked to do, you know, radio for FSU basketball, which again, I'm a basketball guy. And so just, you know, working alongside Gene Deckerhoff, who's a legend and all that stuff like that. So it's just, I mean, I could go on. There's just been a lot of stuff to where, you know, I feel like my life has been led up to this point. So it's been really cool there. And so, yeah, I've been really, you know, I've been super, and then just watching what God's done here at this church. I mean, in the midst of this with transitions and the people's at it. So there's just been a lot of really, really good, you know, kind of personal, you know, highlights. And I think in a, you know, like a big part, I mean, you know, big part, whether, you know, in the world in general, I'll say, man, shout out to Ted Lasso. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Ted Lasso on Apple TV. Ted Lasso, man, in the midst of this crap sandwich of 2020, boy, we were blessed with Ted Lasso came through, and the Mandalorian as well. Again, one of the best memes I read about the Mandalorian, the one I sent to you, Trey, talking about the Mandalorian must be from Duval County, because he's always getting somebody to hold his baby before he gets into a fight. I'm like, it's the only way to do. Shout out to everybody in Duval County right now. All right, well, here's guys. Let me ask you this. Let's do this, and we probably won't go personal level in this one, but let's just, unless you want to, but let's go this. What's been the worst part for you of 2020? Like, I mean, again, what has been like maybe the hardest thing for you for 2020? I know there's like, we could like, all right, here's a list of 40,000 things.
all of it.
Yeah, all of it. But let's just say more from a, you know, it could be the pandemic. It could be, you know, social unrest. It could be, you know, the division among presidency. It could be a death, whatever. What has been the biggest, kind of like the worst thing for you?
Oh, I think kind of what we're seeing on a national level, I've seen a lot more just in my friend group. So I've kind of taken it down to a little bit more of a personal level of just stuff that's going on everywhere in the world right now, of friends that are struggling both financially, who are struggling with trying to reconcile their thoughts about the world. They're trying to run it through a filter that's frankly contrary to my belief system. You know, it's kind of coming from this very agnostic postmodern system, and it's hard to even begin to have conversations some of the time, because it's like, man, you know, wow, it's just trying to have empathy for them in that moment. And yeah, it's just super, super tough.
Yeah. Michelle?
Yeah, I think I would say the worst part is probably seeing how fear drives a lot of the things that were going on this year. With the pandemic and how it's caused like separation in families. Like even in my own family, I haven't seen my parents in a year. And then just like with everything in civil unrest, I think a lot of it has to do with fear and misunderstanding on both sides. So seeing how that's caused division, I think is probably the hardest part. Yeah.
Honestly, the worst part I would say for me would be death. And I think the death in three very particular. Kobe. I played with Kobe, and you know, I was actually talking to one of my friends who's a head basketball coach, and you know, and me and him were talking about it. Matter of fact, we were talking before we you know, a couple hours for his podcast again, and we were just talking about 2020, and one of the things we just said was just like the fact of, man, realizing almost going to be a year to Kobe dying. And you know, and I think why death is because, honestly, for me personally, and it's weird, I'm still having to figure out how to reconcile this, but like there are three people very particular that died that were like superheroes, right? Yeah. Like that's one thing you think about when Kobe died. I'll never forget Damian Lillard, played for the Portland Trailblazers, came out and said, Dame came out and was like, man, he was like, he literally had this thing in the back of his mind the whole day that like, man, later that night that they were going to say, oh man, they found Kobe and everybody, because Kobe, right before the helicopter crashed, Kobe jumped out and saved everybody because he was like a superhero, because Kobe seemed indestructible. And it's like, and it really was. And you're like, no. Like, and I'm like, yeah, like this isn't going to be true. But, and again, Kobe's one of the first athletes, you know, you're growing up with social media. And so for a lot of people, man, watching him, who he was, and I think his second act of his life is what really hit me with, you know, again, you know, the idea with, you know, his daughter. And then, you know, just for me as a father of girls, realizing, man, like, you know, like just him with his daughter, you know what I mean? Like, again, and that was Kobe. We always say that Gigi was Kobe. Of all his children, Gigi was Kobe. And just like, her trajectory and realizing that life was cut short and what he was really doing for women's basketball and his art that he was bringing the books. I mean, just that part, I mean, again, and playing with him, like that part just like was really hard. Then Chadwick Boseman, you know, again, he's Black Panther, he's another superhero, and, you know, and that happening and just how he suffered in such privacy and the things like that. And the third one, man, is someone who actually, you know, I worked with and mentored and coached was Michael Ojo at Florida State. And Ojo, I mean, 7 foot, 300 pounds. I mean, 4% body fat. He was like he's like a superhero and like a guy with the greatest heart on the planet. And, you know, and it's so hard. Like, guy with the greatest heart on the planet died from, like, you know, a heart attack. And, you know, due to, you know, COVID complications. And man, it just like, you know, and that with Ojo. And you're just like, it was just hard because, you know, like with death of people who were like, they seem like, in a sense, like superhuman, and it brought down to reality. And that part was just, I mean, that part was probably the worst for me, but it's like trying to reconcile those things, you know? So that would probably be the worst for, you know, I think for me. I want to ask you guys this thing. What, you know, I kind of just ultimately answer this, but what other thing has probably impacted you the most? You know what I'm saying? The idea, what impacted you, good or bad? The idea, I mean, whether it's from, you know, racial injustice, you know, COVID, you know, potential wars, you know, I don't know, killer bees, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like murder hornets, like, you know what I'm saying? You know, Trey, you know, was it the Benny the Butcher's new album? You know what I'm saying? You know,
I mean, maybe from just an artistic developmental standpoint, it might have been. Hey, Quarantine put out a lot of good music, is all I'm saying.
Hey, Quarantine did. Quarantine did put out a lot of music, all right? Good music, too.
Yes.
So anyway, so what would it be for, let's start with you, Michelle. What has probably impacted you the most?
All of Lil Durk's albums introduced to me by Pastor Adrian. I'm totally
Hey,
but
Durk.
shout out for real because it was on repeat the whole time we were writing that book.
We were Durk world. Hey, make sure you guys listen. Please listen to stuff at your own conviction. This is not your pastor, Lil Durk. And if you do, please get it on the edited version. And some of them you have to skip. You have to skip it. If not, you may want to try out. You may start doing B&Es, and we don't need that.
Anyways. I think honestly, I think we've talked about this on previous podcasts before. I feel like I had a deeper understanding of what it means to be Black in America this year. Just in the midst of everything, and actually having people here who could walk me through that was super helpful. But I think it was just a part of me that got awakened in a way that I didn't know was there, and that I also think was necessary for like my growth as a human.
It's awesome. Trey?
I think the one word I would use to sum it up is just exposure. And so just looking at like how many things were exposed within people, but then also just kind of like trends in the nation overall. So we saw like racial injustice. That was something that has been insidious in our country since its inception, but was really exposed during this time period. And we just see the long lasting ramifications. Then you look at stuff coming out with like the Me Too movement and how many people are being exposed constantly and that are in these super high political places. You see the levels of like drug and alcohol addiction that have gone up, suicides have gone up. There's so many things that are really being exposed right now. And I would say that it's just like, you don't have to look far to see somebody that has been really changed.
Yeah,
I would say, you know, again, I think a lot of it has, you know, it's, I mean, you know, like I said, I think for me, it definitely was the idea of death and the idea that it made me just realize, like, man, just how like important, you know, the opportunities and moments you have, you know what I'm saying, to be really, you know, on top of that and go from there. I mean, I guess I would say, you know, I know one of the things that we had talked a lot about here was like, you know, halfway through the year, we talked about, you know, really like with the church, kind of like shifting with the church, that we like, man, kind of the idea that the church misses moments. You know what I'm saying? We know early on before, you know, this thing started, you know, one of the things I preached a lot about was the idea of like repentance, right? And the thought that this is a moment that God was going to use to shake his church. And now that we're here near the end of the year, like, do you guys, again, do you think the shift actually happened? Do you think that the church really missed this moment? What do you think? I mean, again, I want to talk more specific because I think more like, what do you think is in the future for like the church as a whole?
I low-key want to push that question back to you first. Just because we had talked about it so much when we listened to the John Tyson sermon and other people that we've brought on the podcast. It's been kind of like a common theme of, I feel like the church hasn't missed it, but I don't know about everyone else. Do you feel like we held on as as engaged? Do you feel like we held on in America?
I think at Engage, I think the truth about it is that I think as Engage, and I think about church, I think about, I'm saying the church earlier, I mean, the church as a whole. I think in Engage, no, I don't think we missed it, because I think that our church has always been built. I said it from almost a year into this church. I'm like, we're building a church for the future. And right in the beginning, I just knew, I mean, if you really think about it, I tell people my sermons over the last year and a half have just all been creative ways to literally get to the end of it, to say repent, for the kingdom of God's at hand. Literally for, I mean, you remember this, that Mondays at Midtown to whatever. I mean, we saw people for almost 6 months get saved every week, and literally every sermon was all about come back to repent, for the kingdom of God's hand. That's all it was. And then you get there no, it's still about repentance. And so I think we did. When I say missed it, I think we did our part. Now again, did some people take that? Yeah. Did some people not? Yeah. And I think that's what happened. Do I think that, and this probably will get to more questions to ask more, I think overall as a church in America, from what I see, I think some got it. I think some didn't. I think some were just, hoping for what the future, it's going to, once we get a vaccine or whatever, now, once, President-elect Biden gets in office, things are going to be whatever. And I'm just nah, I mean, it just doesn't work that way. I think God is using this moment. I do believe this COVID was used, not that God created it, but it was used as really a day of the Lord, as a moment of real shaking and purifying in God's church. And I think it'll still go on. And I think that's why you've seen some real exposures. Sherry was talking earlier, you saw some real exposures in the church. I mean, you saw people who were who were rock stars in the kingdom. I mean, again, and like I said, and I'll speak to it not because of being critical toward these people, but it's just whatever. We've all seen it, but from Carl Lentz to even, we lost the death of Ravi Zacharias, but then there's things that come out after that of some ways that Ravi actually, things that were revealed. He was known, he's an incredible apologist. And I mean, again, but there were some character things that actually came out that have been proven that have been wow, you never ever would have thought that. But I want to say this really quick, and I think so many times we live in such an immature, underdeveloped world emotionally that we want to dismiss when we dismiss the good work that someone did, even if they had a dark side. And I'm like, if you want to do that, then just dismiss every human. Yeah, literally. Dismiss Paul, dismiss David, dismiss Martin Luther. I mean, whoever you can think of in history, Martin Luther, anybody, just anyone, they had a dark side. Yeah. And they had moments where they had flaws that they messed up and whatever. And so we don't Ravi Zacharias, we don't take away the great work he did. Good. Ravi Zacharias impacted my life at such a high level. Let me ask this, Carl Lentz. I've listened to sermons of Carl, it really built faith. I mean, I look at Justin Bieber, who seemingly has real genuine faith. He'll credit that a lot to Carl and some of those other guys. Now, that doesn't mean what they did where it's okay, but I just think those are just two, and I could probably give you, again, right now, as we're recording this, there's a mass exodus of Black pastors from the Southern Baptist Convention because of how the SBC, and again, I've got friends in the SBC. I mean, again, I'm thankful for the SBC and all the great work they do around the world, but there's been some things in the foundation of the SBC that were founded on that were honestly founded on levels of racism and things like that. And honestly, things that weren't dealt with in a healthy way are now being exposed, and now there's a mass exodus. And so I just think that there's going to be more. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. There's going to be more stuff that comes to play in this moment. So I think some people got it. I think others don't. And I think others will, and they'll just keep being what it is going forward. Those are my thoughts about the overall church. But you guys want to add anything to that?
I think I agree 100% with thoughts about the way the church is going. I think, and kind of that idea of day of the Lord, that we're still in it and we're going to be in it for a little bit longer. That is, it's not just 2020, like you've been saying. Now that you find out that COVID is mutating and it's more contagious and it's spreading more and more, is the vaccine going to be able to stop this strain? So I think that there's going to be ways that everybody thinks and everybody is hoping and anticipating that, hey, it's going to all go back to normal in 6 months from now. And I just have this aching feeling that it's not, and that kind of that period of exposure is going to keep going. But God in his grace is giving churches specifically that time to repent and come forward. And it's just going to be a matter of what ends up happening. I mean, I just heard yesterday, It's just crazy that there's a church in Michigan that just got approved to be white only. But
Minnesota. Yep, white only.
What?
Yeah.
What?
And the whole thing, and which goes to something interesting, because when you read the article, they were like, well, we could have, if we did this, we could have faced lawsuits. And I'm like, there comes a point in time where you're like, when something is just wrong, regardless of what you may face, you stand up for what's right.
Right.
And that's where, when I read that, like, our lawsuit, I'm like, no, like that is a crock. You stand up for what's right, no matter what it may cost you.
Yeah.
But what that is an exposure of is like, like, man, you're okay for the company, or we may get sued. Okay. Then we're going to get sued and we're going to go to war because it's what's right. Yeah. And so it's like some like ancient Nordic like religion or something like that just like, yeah, but it's like, man, it is straight. I mean, it's a small town.
Yeah.
Straight, only white people can be in it. Welcome to 2020.
Oh my God. I forget sometimes that this is a microphone, so you can't see like the severe side eye on my face right now. Oh my God.
That's man. And it is, but I think you're going to see more of that stuff.
Wow.
You're going to see more crazy, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In this process.
Gosh, I feel like that's the only thing that makes me think like, well, what you said, like some people definitely missed it. Like when you hear about things like that, it's like, wow. Even like
the whites only church.
Oh,
like,
God.
the whites only church. You're like, yeah,
That's the most boring church
Right.
in the world. Like, that church.
How unseasoned are those potlucks?
Right. We would like the plain baked chicken with a little bit of salt and pepper.
A lot of green bean
Your
casserole.
roasted green bean, yes. The one with the mac and cheese with the vegetables in it. That's what I want in my potluck.
All right, sorry.
Anyways.
Well, here's a question I want to ask you guys. Now, what do you guys think will change in 2021? And what do you think will stay the same?
Nothing is the same per our sermon series. Oh God. Honestly, I feel like a lot of things are going to stay the same culturally, temporarily.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think COVID is going anywhere. I don't think travel restrictions are going anywhere. I think the political tension is not going anywhere because I am fully anticipating some kind of fight in order for Biden to actually be in the White House. So I think there are some things that are going to stay the same for a little bit. I think it's more so if the church is going to take responsibility to lead and initiate change. Because if we have the capacity to initiate something new based on truth, it would be us to do it. So if there is change, I think we would have to be at the head of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going into 2021, it might not be immediate like Michelle's saying, but I think there's going to be a lot of traction that starts getting made towards building more of your online persona. So having this identity that exists solely online. Now, whether that looks like AI or video games or it's social media or something else, I feel like there's going to continue to be a disconnect and people are going to isolate themselves and pull away from community. And in that, I think that there's just going to be a lot of stuff that comes out of that.
I think both of you guys are spot on with what you see. I mean, I think that what I think will happen that'll carry is, again, I've been talking to you guys a little bit about it, but just reading this book, this book called Post-Corona, and the guy's right. He's an economist. He's a futurist. And so it's just really interesting when you start looking at trends in culture and economy. All Corona was, and all this COVID moment was like, it's just an accelerator. So it's just an accelerator. If you ever think about, whenever you watch shows and there's like in the, like if you watch a detective show or, a CSI and it's like arson or something like that. It's like, oh man, like, they use an accelerator to speed the fire up. I have friends of mine who are firefighters, and when there's arson, they're looking for the accelerator that created that because it makes the fire go faster. All COVID was an accelerator of what was going to happen anyway. So again, like I told you guys, this morning as we were checking in as a staff, was that, man, we saw literally 10 years. I mean, e-commerce 11% to 27%, and it went from 11% over about a decade, and from 0 to 11%, and now we've seen it grow to 16% in 8 weeks of the first part. So it's like we literally have seen a decade's worth of work. But here's the thing, it's a decade as well we have seen a decade's worth of, if you had bad habits, it got accelerated. If your mental health, it accelerated. If you had, if it was a lot of issues in your marriage, now what would have taken you 10 years to discover in your marriage got exposed pretty fast in your parenting and whatever. Now, let me say this. I think that's actually, so when you say what's going on, I think it's just going to continue to accelerate things.
Yeah.
What we would have had at 2030, we're having at 2020. What was going to happen? I mean, even if they seen it, again, I studied and look at a lot of technology. There are three companies this year that put, I don't know if it was patents or they actually put out, with the state of California for the idea of flying cars. The fact that there are 3D printers they're able to build rockets now. The fact that we saw, I mean, there's just so many things that happen. They're just, we were thinking, we're getting it 2030 now. We may get it in 2 or 3 years. And so some of that will be good. Some of that will be really bad, because I think that's why we've seen, again, online alcohol consumption is up 268% this year.
Wow.
Ordering online alcohol is 268%. I mean, so again, so it's like now it's that people before, you go to the store, you're so used to have it. Now they're like, oh yeah, I've got, I've got a subscription, or I do whatever. And it's sped everything up, and it's going to create more and more habit. We've seen domestic violence rise. Suicide has risen, as you guys have heard me say, 2,300 people in 1 month killed themselves in Japan. We have just seen, so it's just going to, so I think it's just going to continue to accelerate. And I think here's going to be the danger, is because, again, it's like I talk about, the chasm will be there, expectations and reality. The expectations, we're going to go back to normal. Realities, we won't. And people are going to get more and more depressed, and they're going to get more and more anxiety filled. And going to what Trey said, they're going to create more and more of their own persona, living disconnected. Like we talked about, the idea we're going to live in virtualism, we'll live in virtual reality, we'll be disconnected from the world, and it'll be more and more. And I think it creates more and more of a dangerous kind of way. But I say that, I think it's a lot of hope, though, for the church. Because the one thing the church has that's always been the marker of the church, and I think that's what, guys, is even as I'm sitting here, the biggest thing that God is ultimately getting the church back to is back to the main thing. The main things have always been it's Jesus. But the thing about it was that we were birthed into a family. It's family. That's what marked the early church. It was people from all different walks of life, from different ethnic backgrounds, socioeconomic classes that did life together. Again, I say it a lot. In Antioch, 19 different ethnicities, different socioeconomic classes. The first time they're called Christians is because of how they did life with different races and ethnicities, how they did family relationship. And I think the church will have something that the world will crave and desire if the church is willing to do that. Or will the church go with the trends of everything else? Those who've had healthy community and care about community, I think will do some really cool things and actually make some real impact. Those who don't, it'll be exposed. And I think it is being exposed. It's a reason why, people, they may not be coming back or whatever. So I think there's a lot of stuff that's accelerating, but I think it gives a lot of opportunity. Like that's what they said. Literally, the book I'm reading says that COVID is an accelerator. And COVID is literally on one side there's acceleration, and the other side is opportunity. Those are two things. Opportunity, acceleration, and opportunity are the two things that are there right now, kind of in the midst of it. And so I want to ask a couple more things, and then we're going to make this a short podcast right here. Is this simple thing. What's one leadership thing that's been helpful for you in 2020? Like, what's one leadership thing that's been helpful for you in 2020?
I think the first one that comes to mind is probably just the idea of dying to self. First off, it's something that always gets preached in marriage. And I feel like, getting married 2 weeks later, I'm in quarantine with my wife for the first 6 months of our marriage. To go off your point about stuff getting accelerated, I feel like I did 7 years of marriage in 6 months.
Dude. Listen, and that's what people say. They'll be like, oh man, listen, because people who have not been in any type of healthy human relationship will tell you this. Oh man, you and your wife, man, quarantine, you're newlyweds. I'm like, yeah, that's great and all. But also, you know what else is there? All your dysfunction is there, and it just speeds everything up really fast. So I cannot imagine being a newlywed. Because listen, we live in a different country. I live in Spain, which was great because that's one of the things that would happen in the older times. When you got married, you were out of the military for a year. to be like with your like spouse or with, you know, with your bride. And I think that's great. But you also have the ability to do stuff. Like when I lived in Spain, I still like, I wasn't like cooped up like in an apartment. I actually like could go play So it was great. You know what I'm saying? But like to just be there with one person, I don't care how much you love somebody. At some point in time, you're like, yo, I don't want to look at you anymore. Like I love you, but like, I want to go do something else. I can't even walk outside. Like, where are you going to go? Like, you can't even go anywhere. You know what I'm saying? And so anyway, but keep going, Trey. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I just feel all of that very, very accurate. So I just feel that during that time period, we both learned a lot, but there was a lot of ways within that too that it's like, man, I'm way more selfish than I thought that I was. There's stuff that's within me that's broken, that's natural, that's just there because of sin and there because of past, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like, you know, through getting counsel via FaceTime, via telephone call, whatever it may have been during that situation, there was a lot of ways that I've came out. And I feel like I'm starting to see the effects of it just in my day-to-day job now, that there's times where I need to be able to elevate other people and me come down just so that they can be empowered and go in that same way. And I don't know if I'd had the past year, if it would have been to quite that point to where it is right now.
Yeah, that's good.
So?
I think one of the biggest things that I learned in terms of leadership was the significance of preparation. I feel like even just the fact for where we are and how we got here is because, I mean, from how you built the church, we're building for the church of the future. And I think that has enabled us to flourish this year. And so it's definitely made me think like, okay, and the things that are in my hands, the things I want to do, the things that we're in the middle of trying to push forward, how do we make sure we're building it not for just this current moment, but 5, 10, 15 years down the line? What do we want it to look like? And what can we start putting in place right now so that we can handle it when we get there?
Yeah. That's good. Your biggest leadership point is, I think, something again, and it's going to really sound like plugging something, but it really isn't. It's just like, I'm just more and more thankful and convinced of like God, how he speaks, and just the fact that he's so gracious. But the biggest leadership point is something that I'm talking about constantly is the idea of like authenticity. Because here's what's happening is that like the main thing has to be the main thing. When you don't have money because you lost your job, like now all of a sudden, oh man, like going to, you know, Starbucks, you know, and spending, you know, whatever amount, like that's not a necessity, right? The fact that when you're just cooped up in the house and you're like, man, the fact that like, dude, like, and showing like, man, being able to go outside and like just enjoy being outside, right? Like I always joke, like I don't like being outdoors or whatever. Let me tell you this, like one thing I thoroughly appreciate that's happened with me during this time. I'm like, oh no, I actually really like being outside. Like it was one of my highlights is actually like, you know, like walking, like literally, like I go on, like, I mean, it's been one of the highlights I've had is I go on Florida State's campus, like, you know, cause then nobody was on campus.
Right.
So for like 3 or 4 days a week, that's my first time honestly walking the campus in almost like 15 to 20 years. And so now it's like, I feel like I know that campus better than most people because literally 3 or 4 days a week I walk, you know, 2 or 3 miles all around that campus, whatever. And so I appreciate the main things. I think that, you know, you're starting to see the main things in companies and corporations, individuals in their lives, the main things when you're facing potential death, you're like, you know, even if potential COVID stuff, whatever, you're like, oh no, the rest of the stuff is fluff. When like a lot of people, you know, I think that when in their own mental health, like a lot of times some of the worry, I mean, some people it's exposed and it's going to be good things for them to take big jumps. For others, like they're going to worry more and more about stuff that doesn't really, like the stuff that pushes their anxieties or their depression. It doesn't really, in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. You know, me being around, like talking about death earlier, and then me actually being around people who are friends of mine, people I dearly love, who impact my life, facing really, really critical health things or really critical family things, you realize like, yo, what I'm worried about is not that important. This like the main things are the main things. But here's what I say, authenticity is a leadership point, because what it is this, most of the other fluff stuff is not really who you are. Now what's happening is just purifying. I mean, you're just seeing it. And I think that's if I can tell anybody, what is it? It is authenticity. It is self-awareness. Know who you are. What's the main thing? Like this is who, as a family, your individual life, what you do at your job, your skill set, mission of a church, the gospel, the heart of the gospel. Like, I mean, everybody's like, listen, people still arguing over like, you know, whatever, like dumb stuff of like kind of trivial things in the kingdom. Like, dude, like literally we can't even meet. I mean, like, think about this. The main thing of like, oh, before like, oh, we have lights. Should we do this? We're like, yo, can we just be in a building together? I don't care. I don't care if it's for like candlelight, like Ebenezer Scrooge. I could care less. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just like, can we meet? The main things have to become the main things. And so I think but what it is, it makes you, it's the authentically who you are. So that's kind of the thing you want to take. Okay. We got 2 more things we're going to ask. Okay. The first one's going to be this. We're going to ask the question, what is one thing about 2020 that if you could change? If you would really, you could change just one thing, or if you felt like, man, if I could add something, you know what I mean? Like I would add to fix a problem. Okay. But you can't, you know, COVID's here. Let's say COVID's the one thing, you know, we always say, hey, let's get a vaccine, whatever. But beyond that, will we do that? Okay. And the second question we're going to ask later is going to be, you know, we'll get to this and who's your favorite guest on the pod. So we'll get to that. Okay. So let's start with the first question. What's the one thing you would change? What's one thing that you would, or, you know, maybe would add or bring?
Mine would probably be having everybody receive a copy and believe within everything that's written in the book Mask Off.
Hey, let's go. Let's go. Shout out to Trey. Trey, we're trying to get a raise. I see you, dog. Hey. I see you, Trey. You're a smart man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm dead.
Man, if I could just bring one thing, honestly, it would be to see a real biblical level of racial reconciliation just brought to the country, brought to the world. That would be, I don't know, I feel like there's so much that would stem out of it, just thinking about like our values that are here, thinking about diversity as a value, thinking about the ways authenticity is a value, that if there were ways we could really see each other in the same way that Jesus views us, that I don't know, it would be a completely different world to live in. So
Yeah.
Michelle?
I really like that. I was trying to figure out, even just like everything that happened over the summer, I feel like we hit such a high of tension. I feel like a lot of people anticipated for sure something's going to come out of it. And I feel like it kind of lulled and things are like just like back down again. I'm like, wait, did anything actually change? Yeah. Or are things in progress? I'm just not seeing it. And so I think either it's super slow moving or it just kind of isn't moving at all. Yeah. And so I would agree with that as well, just being able to see something tangible in there instead of it just being a heightened reaction, emotional reaction, then there actually being no movement. I think maybe that. Yeah. Just in general, overall, instead of it just being heightened emotions, sporadic here and there based on different things that have happened throughout the year, being able to see actual movement and directions towards the things that people are responding and reacting to.
Yeah. Those are great. I would probably, if I could, it would be to, if it was, you could inject this into people or you could teach it and everybody had to do it and they would get it, would be like understanding, like recognizing anxiety, understanding where it comes from, and then giving people practical ways to like, this is how you like don't live out of that. So if that's like, hey, it'll be easy, right? There's like a vaccine we created, or we just inject somebody, they got it, they're self-aware, they do that'd be awesome. But that would be like the thing, because I think most of everything we deal with today is just driven out of fear, anxiety, and it creates systems, it creates division, it creates chaos, it creates people just being dumb, it creates people are idiots, it creates like it makes the body of Christ look awful. Like, again, it makes the body look bad, and it's in the name of like it's mask and good theology, or it's mask and justice. And it's like, dude, it's just literally, it's like I tell people, most of the stuff I see in Christianity today is like having a big pile of crap, like wrapped in like Christmas wrapping paper. Like, that's pretty much the church. Like the church, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, because it is. It's like, oh, it's great and looking good. That's why we're doing it. It looks good. But at the end of the day, that's what's motivating. Yeah, what's motivating it is just fears and anxiety. So that's what it'd be for me. And so
you said inject, and all I could think about was the black solstice. It was was supposed to be on December 21st.
dude.
I'm like, why would I change my answer? I want the superpowers.
Dude, that's what I'm saying. Black solstice, man. Golly, man. Listen, I was over there hurt. I was hoping, man, brother. Like, I mean, superpower. What's superpower, though? Let me ask you this. You can't speak to this, Trey, because you're white. So,
Hey, understandably, I was already backing my chair out. I was like, this is not the time to speak up. Black Twitter is going to be all over me if they hear about it. It's like,
here we go. White guy want to jump in. I was like, they say he wasn't jumping on these superpowers. Y'all got all the superpowers anyway. Like, Michelle, what would be your superpower?
Teleportation. Hands down.
That makes sense.
Hands down. In and out of whatever country I wanted. Same day. I could literally teleport into one country, be there for a whole 12 hours, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, teleport right back to my bed.
Dude, that would definitely be you. Mine for sure would be to fly. Oh yeah, for sure to fly.
How long is your fly time though?
I need at least
like, is it gonna take you like 8 hours to get from here to Hawaii? Or?
No. It's like, no, I got it like that. I got that Superman, like
super speed.
Yeah, I got that Mach, and I could go, but like I could get there, and like if like for example, if I had to go to California, I could get to California like in like an hour.
Okay.
All right. Like, I would like to fly because what I'm saying, I would be the greatest thing ever to be able to do that. Yeah, definitely. That or I was thinking about that. Yeah. Because if I wasn't like serving Jesus, it sure would be like to be able to like, kind of idea like, trying to walk through walls and stuff like that. Because I would just be sticking up every bank. You know what I'm saying? you know what I'm saying? Like, what I'm saying? Get paid if I wasn't a Jesus follower. But anyway. But all right, so here's the last thing. So I'm gonna list off who were your 3 favorite people that were on the podcast for you. And again, I'm going to pull up, I don't know, you may be thinking about that. I'm actually going to pull this up as we're sitting here. Our Street Theology pod, again, we've had some really, really cool guests on the pod. So where's it at? Oh, not here. So does anybody have anybody you want to say from the jump? You can go ahead and start, throwing it out there. Is anybody?
Mark Sayers.
Oh, Mark, I forgot all about that. It's crazy. Dude, that's what I'm saying. That's
my God.
That's wild.
I wasn't even here for that one. I just listened to it.
Sayers was definitely.
Sayers. I was going to say, Mark Sayers is definitely on my list. Pastor Dave Gibbons, definitely on my list.
Pastor Dave.
Yeah. Mine, man, as I'm going back, I'm looking at from the first, I'm looking for the episode and going from there. I would have to say Mark Sayers for sure. One of my favorites, man, was Brian Schwartz.
Yes.
Brian Schwartz was really good. Brian was really, really good. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah.
And oh man, it's gonna be. I'm gonna have to say there's a tie. No, you know what? Brian would have to go to like 4.
Okay.
It would be Greg Okeson.
Yes.
Greg Okeson would be 2A and Dave Gibbons would be like 2B.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think Sayers was the first, but Dr. Greg Okeson was phenomenal. I thought, Dave Gibbons is always, he's always amazing. And so, but yeah, man, we've had a lot of really cool guests. I mean, my people trip out there like, yo, you had Mark Sayers. I'm like, how'd you guys do that? I'm like, we just asked and he said yes. And that's I said, this is some of the beauty of like right now of the idea of COVID, man. People who you never would have been able to get on a podcast or do stuff like that, actually, they're willing to do it because it doesn't cost them anything. They can just, pull up Zoom and just have a conversation, and people are used to it. So that part is really awesome. Yeah. So, I'm super excited about coming up. Again, coming up and, we're going to have a lot of guests coming on talking about
who do you want to be on in 2021?
Oh, man.
Top two.
Top two in 2021. That's really good. John Tyson would be one.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
John Tyson would definitely be one. Tyson would be one. Tim Keller. Keller would definitely be one. I would probably say Carrie Newton. You know what? I like Carrie. But I don't know if I would put Carrie in there. I maybe would say, I would probably say either Craig Rochelle or I really like Erwin McManus because I think Erwin's such a creative. Like I really like him. Guys, I take that back. I would really like Jerry Lorenzo. from Fear of God clothing.
Okay.
Like I would love to have Jerry Lorenzo because I think he has really built something, pretty remarkable. Even as today as we speak, he just, signed a deal with Adidas and just a guy's a D, and he's running all Adidas, like running the division for their basketball. But this is a guy's avid Jesus follower, loves God, but he's went into high fashion. He's adding real value in culture. How does he manage the tension of being a year in high fashion? That seems to be opposite of when you think about like the kingdom, because it's always about, man, those who are, in a sense, like lower than, or those who don't have. So how are you doing that? How do you reconcile that? Now you're like being committed to this brand. How do you stay pure to loving God with all your heart, but yet still do it? Like guys like that, I would love to do it. So there's a lot of ones. I mean, one is I'm fighting really hard for potentially, potential guests like Mark Driscoll potentially got to be someone. Again, I'm really excited. Again, we already recorded. It'll be dropping in the new year. That I did one with all my friends. I actually talked on this idea called No New Friends and like No New Friends.
2021, the year of no new friends.
We're talking about how do you actually develop healthy biblical friendships and what that looks like. Again, with guys who I feel called to walk with for the rest of my life. And so, So we got a lot of stuff, and I think it'll be a lot of things. So, well, guys, hey, listen, I hope you guys had you enjoyed today. I hope you guys actually spend time again as you're listening to this as this drops again. It's going to drop as this is coming out on December 30th, that you guys actually would take a day or two before the new year, maybe on New Year's Eve, actually reflect, man, what are some highs, lows, grieve, lament over things that you lost, man, celebrate some of the great things, and actually come with hope and faith and expectation of the new year. I'm reminded, I leave you with simply this as we go into the new year, is that this idea of hope, again, one of the gifts to me this year, it's always been there, but it's a gift I've received. It's the book of Jeremiah. And the one thing I love about this book, and you guys just be ready, you're probably gonna hear me talk a lot and preach a lot from it. I've already done it, but it'll be more and more. But the book of Jeremiah is the fact that is realizing how God just, even in chaos, like we can still have hope because his promises do come true regardless of what's happening in the world. And so there's probably things God has spoken to you that circumstantially don't seem like they're going to happen. But this is one of those things I'm not talking about but one of those things that haven't left you, where you're like, I feel like God keeps speaking this and you want it to go away because you don't want to hope for this, but it keeps staying there. You don't want to hope for it, but it stays there. And you just keep wanting to go away and you keep praying, God, please take this away. I don't want this anymore because I feel like it's causing you torment. But God keeps growing it. That I want to encourage you that if you feel like that, God he just holds to his promises of hope. And that's what I'm realizing, is that we should be a people full of hope. Doesn't mean things are going to go great. I look at Jeremiah's life. It was a nightmare in Jeremiah's life, or the circumstances, but God just moved constantly through his life. And I tell people, man, for 10 years of my life, my entire life, I said this to my business coach, Audrey, and I said to Audrey, I was like, man, I feel like my entire life was built for this moment. And I said this about 6 months ago before a lot of this stuff started to happen. And it's just like, and it really is. I'm starting to see so much of my life, the things that God had dropped in my heart in the midst of when it should never happen, start to happen. And what I realized is that God answers prayers and he holds to his word regardless of circumstances. And so, guys, I hope that whatever that is for you, that you still, no matter what you're going through, that you would have true biblical hope going into 2021. So until next time, God, into the new year, we'll talk to you soon on Street Theology.